Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to be doing something a little bit different and something special compared to what I usually do on the channel. And I think this will be my first official ranking style video for the channel. But this is one I've been having kind of on the back burner for a couple months now. And now, especially with Spider-Man No Way Home cracking the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time, I wanted to take advantage of that opportunity and rank my personal picks for the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time. So let's get started right after this. Welcome once again, my name is Austin, and this channel is all about helping you to dig deeper and go further to better understand faith and film and everything that's in between. If that sounds exciting to you, make sure you click the subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on any future content. I'm really excited to do this video. Like I said, it's one that's kind of been on the back burner for a couple of months now, but with the advantage of having Spider-Man No Way Home cracking the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time worldwide, I wanted to do this ranking now. So first, let's go through the movies that are on this list. I'm going to go through the movies from 10 to 1 with their box office numbers. That way you kind of know what to expect on this list. First, we have Furious 7. Then at number 9, we have The Avengers. Then Spider-Man No Way Home, the most recent edition. The Lion King. Then we have Jurassic World. Avengers Infinity War takes the 5th slot. Then Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. And then we have Titanic taking the 3rd slot. Then Avengers End Game, which for some time was on number 1, but is currently in the number 2 slot. And the continuing number 1 ever since back in 2010-ish, right around then, was Avatar with $2.847 billion. So those are the movies I'm going to be ranking on this list. It was a really interesting list to rank, and I found it a little more difficult than I anticipated. Let's get started with my ranking, and make sure you join me in the comments down below with your ranking of these top 10 movies. First, in the 10th slot, I'm going to go with Jurassic World. Now, I like Jurassic World, but it doesn't really capture the magic that was the original Jurassic Park. And the franchise has kind of gone downhill ever since Jurassic Park, which tends to happen. But I think Jurassic World is perfectly likable. Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard are perfectly good in the role. It's entertaining. It's a fun movie, but it's just not the same as the original. Too many special effects, too many conveniences, that kind of thing. They just make some choices that aren't the best for the franchise. And though I'm still excited for the franchises going, this movie is probably the best of the most recent movies that we've gotten in the Jurassic Park franchise so far. So it's perfectly enjoyable. I like it, but it's going to make the bottom of my list for these 10 movies. Next, in the 9th slot, we have Furious 7. Now, the Fast and Furious franchise is one that I've only just gotten into over the past 2 or 3 years, but have really enjoyed the ride. And I really enjoyed Furious 7. It's probably one of my favorite amongst the franchise of the Fast and Furious movies, with 5 probably being my favorite, just like a lot of other people's. But Furious 7 does a great job of kind of closing the chapter and the book on Paul Walker's character with his tragic passing. And though he isn't physically in the movie for that wrap up, they do a good job wrapping it up for his character. Obviously, at the point of this film, the Fast and Furious movies have become kind of outrageous and over the top, but that's kind of why we love them at the same time. So even though it's not the best movie in this franchise, it still kind of edges out a little bit over Jurassic World for me and making the 9th slot. Next, in the 8th slot, we have Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Now, this is another one that's a perfectly watchable, perfectly entertaining, really fun movie, but it suffers from pretty much copy and pasting the plot of Star Wars A New Hope, Episode 4. This was well loved when it initially came out. I mean, it made over $1 billion in the box office, but because of the tragic kind of drop in the film's quality going forward in this franchise, this one has also kind of been paired in with those movies and has become pretty universally hated as well. I still enjoy it. I think it's perfectly entertaining. It does some cool stuff with the characters of the original trilogy, and as well as introducing these new characters. Obviously, the inconsistencies of the rest of this trilogy really outweigh its benefits, but at the same time, I do enjoy this movie quite a bit, and it's a really cool nostalgia trip for any Star Wars fan. Next, in the 7th slot, we have Titanic. Now, this is the movie that for the longest time I had never seen, so it was a classic movie I'd never seen. For a long time, it was the highest grossing movie of all time. As I said earlier, it's still in the 3rd slot, so this is an astounding film. Now, I'm not a romance person. I do really enjoy drama movies, but I'm not really a romance person. But I really was invested in the relationship of this movie. And not only that, the effects of this film are incredible for what it did for filmmaking. I love how invested James Cameron was into kind of like searching through the wreck of the original Titanic. And it just, you can tell the love and reverence that he had for the source and the stories that were told from survivors and families of survivors or families of people who passed in this tragic event. It's a great movie, and even though it clocks in at over 3 hours long, it really moves at a good pace for me. I really enjoyed it. There's good drama, there's good romance, there's good action along the way, and it's just a beautiful story with a great film. So I think it definitely deserves to stay on this list, and for me, it comes in the 7th slot. Next, in the 6th slot, we have The Lion King. So I have a quick disclaimer. In editing this video, I realized that I was talking about the animated classic The Lion King when the actual movie in this slot was the 2019 live-action adaptation, and I have completely different thoughts on each of these movies. Obviously, in thinking it was the animated classic, I put it in this slot, but in actuality, with it being the live-action adaptation, I would actually put that in last place in the 10th slot. So any movie I talked about up until this point, move it up a slot because The Lion King's going in last place. I think the live-action Lion King is one of the laziest movies that Disney has ever made, which is very unfortunate because Jon Favreau directed this movie, and he's an excellent director. He's done great films for Disney besides The Lion King and other studios as well. So he does a great job with the direction of this movie, but I just think it's so lazy in that it literally is an exact copy and paste of the first movie, aside from a few lines here and there. The songs are pretty much exactly the same, and they barely changed anything about it. You're essentially watching a live action version of this movie, which, I don't know. I guess this is kind of what they were going for, but they could have done a little bit more to be more creative and give a more unique adaptation of the story, rather than making it feel like we're watching a nature documentary that is reenacting the Lion King story. So if we're talking about the live action Lion King, that's easily going in last place for me. Talking about the animated one, I would have put it in this slot. So that's my disclaimer for this video. Everyone makes mistakes. That's okay. Let's continue on. Next, one of my more controversial picks, probably in the 5th slot, I'm going to put James Cameron's Avatar. Now, this is a movie that since its release has kind of become the movie to hate. And I understand the shortcomings of this film, but I still really enjoy it. I think the effects of this film are incredible. The technology that James Cameron helped to develop for this film is astounding, and I can't wait to see, since the, I don't know, 15 years since that movie came out, how much better they're going to be in this movie, because they were already great and I think still hold up pretty well today. And what I heard really interestingly in a podcast is, though the story's kind of lacking, that was the proof of concept for the technology in the original Avatar, and I definitely agree with that. The story is not the best, it's not the most original, but so many movies and stories of Hollywood aren't. But I just thoroughly enjoy the technology that was utilized to create this living, breathing world. I love the world building of this movie, and I can't wait to see that expanded on in sequel films. So we're not talking quite about sequel films yet, but that's just kind of my rabbit trail with that. So I still love this movie. I find it really entertaining, even though it's kind of a Dances with Wolves, Pocahontas mix. I still really enjoy it. I get enough out of it that I find it to be a thoroughly enjoyable film, and it's one of my favorites of James Cameron's films, even though he's got some incredible films out there, and I would definitely put it on this list, kind of at the mid-level since we're at the number 5 slot. Funnily enough, the rest of my ranking of these movies is all gonna be MCU movies. So, in the fourth slot, we have Marvel's Avengers. Now, this movie was absolutely groundbreaking for its time, and awesomely enough, it still holds up to this day, and is one that I would consider probably still one of the best Marvel movies for the MCU. And it's just awesome to see all of these characters brought together for the first time after getting individual installments of them and kind of introduced to their characters. That advantage it gives for this film of not necessarily needing to do all of that background work because it's already been laid for this movie, and that's something that'll continue to expand in other movies we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But the first Avengers movie still holds up to this day. Loki is still an awesome villain for the Avengers to contend with. We get the subtle hints of Thanos, which is the villain to come later in the MCU. The action's really entertaining. It's got a good story to it. This movie still holds up to this day, and it's definitely one of the best in the MCU, and also one of the best on this list. Now, for these final top 3 of ranking these movies, this is the area I probably most struggled with, because we had Avengers Infinity War, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Avengers End Game. And I was very torn on where to place each of these. Now, number 1 was a little bit easier, but 2 and 3 is kind of where I struggled the most on this list. So, coming in the third slot, at least at the time of making this video, subject to change upon rewatches, I'm going to put Avengers Endgame in the third slot. I love Avengers Endgame. I still have only seen it once, amazingly. Back in the theater, I own the movie and I've still only seen it once, but I've seen so many different clips and stuff of it. I might as well have seen the movie 5 or 6 times. So I still love this movie, even though the Avengers Infinity War definitely ranks higher for me amongst the MCU and these movies on this list. I think the story is great. I love seeing the surviving Avengers from Infinity War completely at their wits' end trying to figure out what to do to bring them back and stop Thanos. I think it's really cool to see them at that low point and then trying to build back up to get the team together to finally defeat Thanos. So I think it's a really good exploration of grief and loss that the most of the film really gets to focus on, and it's a really interesting kind of look back at the franchise. And so I think they do a really good job with it. And obviously the final act of this film is just a nerd's absolute dream for anyone who'd been following these characters and loved them for the past 10 years. It's a great movie, and I still really enjoy it. But there's a couple movies that just rank a bit higher for me. Next, in the number 2 slot, as I said, very torn between Avengers Endgame and what I ended up going with of Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, it might be the recency of it, of me still coming off of the high of seeing this movie, but I kind of put them on a level playing field because I have only seen Avengers Endgame once, and I've only seen Spider-Man No Way Home once. Now, again, there's a bit of recency with Spider-Man No Way Home, but for me, I think I liked Spider-Man No Way Home better than Avengers Endgame. It's kind of the endgame of the Spider-Man franchise in a way, and the Spider-Man character, which is really interesting. I will, I think, spoil Spider-Man No Way Home here in this video since it's been a while. I didn't spoil it last time I talked about it, but the fact that they brought back so many characters historically from the Spider-Man franchise and pulled it off incredibly well is astounding. This movie does a great job of balancing each and every character that it brings in. Not only the villainous characters of Dr. Octopus, the Green Goblin, the Sandman, and Electro, and the Lizard. Like, the lesser villains kind of still have their moments, even though they're being brought in from movies that weren't the best. But the higher up villains like Dr. Octopus and Green Goblin have really great story arcs in this movie as well. And it's really cool to kind of see that transition from where they were and where we left off with them in their franchises and now in this world here. So I thought Doc Ock would be my favorite villain of this movie. It ended up being Green Goblin, which truly is a great performance from Willem Dafoe. I love that. Might be one of my favorite performances in the movie. It probably is. And then even besides that, all of these Spider-Men coming together from the different world. Each of them got to do something that enhanced their character. They didn't just drop in, say a few lines, swing on some web, punch a guy in the face, and hit back to their world. They actually had an impact on this story, and they actually had character arcs that made sense for their characters at this point. And I loved that. And then not only that, because this movie could have felt incredibly overcrowded with all those villains coming back, both the old Spider-Man coming back, but Tom Holland gives a phenomenal performance. It's probably his best performance inside of the MCU and his franchise so far, and it truly adds another level to the character of Peter Parker and Spider-Man in this story, and makes me truly excited for what's going to be next for his character. So that is why, at this moment at least, Spider-Man No Way Home takes the number 2 slot for me. Finally, in the number 1 slot, pretty easy pick for me, is Avengers Infinity War. I love this movie, and both the pairing of Avengers Infinity War and Avengers End Game makes a great pairing, because it just tells an incredible story. And what I kind of like better about Infinity War over End Game is it's different amongst the MCU. Most of the time within the MCU, we're following the heroes, which we are following the heroes along with this journey, but we don't realize it till the end. But we're actually following Thanos on his corrupted hero's journey. And it's really interesting to get that thorough line and thread through it and not realize that it's happening until the end, and just the shock of everything that takes place with Thanos' snap and actually winning and beating the Avengers. I think it was truly impressive and surprising. Everyone in our theater was shocked at that moment. Everyone in the fandom was shocked that they did something so epic and large scale, and it's something that we're still feeling the effects of in the MCU forward of so far the 4, I think, MCU movies we've gotten and the 4 or 5 TV shows. We're still feeling the effects of what happened in Infinity War, and that's truly a testament to how great the storytelling was in this one. Again, kind of like Spider-Man No Way Home, Infinity War is a movie that could have easily felt overcrowded, but every character has their moment to shine, whether it's a few lines or even a scene. It's great storytelling, and it's such a good balance of characters and story, and just filling in the rest of the story for the Infinity Saga of the past 10 years of Marvel movies. So Infinity War is definitely going to take the top slot for me. So that's my ranking of the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time. I had a really fun time with this list. I would love to hear what other people pick in the comments down below, because there's such a variety to the movies on this list. So thanks again for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing your list in the comments below. I'll see you in the next video.